we've got 3 indicator signals occurring within a window of about 5 bars or so. So that seems to me that Joe knows that, you know, his rules happen within this 5-bar period. So instead of using the toggle node, I'm going to use something that's quite a bit simpler to do here. So let's see. Let me we'll get started here, and I'll make something up. So I'm actually gonna fall back to what I call the classic stock system. So this was an idea that I've seen taught, you know, in those free seminars when you go to your local city's hotel conference rooms, you know, and some big companies putting on a free stock trading seminar and trying to get you to sign up and stuff. So this is a system that you know, I've seen taught in those type of free kind of sales pitches. So let's see here. So give me a moment to get my chart set up. Alright, I'm going to put this on a daily chart. So this, like I said, this system was designed for stocks, so it works a lot better on daily bars. And let's see, no, I don't have any stock symbols. Let's see, let's go to oil. Yeah, I'll put oil up here. Alright, so the system I'm going to use, you know, to illustrate, you know, how to connect 3 different conditions together, you know, within so many bars, is this stock system here. So condition 1 is we have price crossing below or price crossing above a 30-day moving average. All right, the next condition here, and I'm going to make another adjustment on my indicator. I'm going to make this a little looser, so I'm going to adjust these threshold values. Right. Okay, so the next condition is we're looking for our stochastics to cross up above this 25 level or cross down below the 75 level. And the last condition is, you know, we're looking for the MACD to cross that 0 line. So let's see if we actually have. Yeah. All right. I'm going to speed up the MACD here a little bit, just to, so I can generate some more signals. Let's see. All right. Well, we'll just see how this works out. Okay. So let me get BloodHound open, and I'll put today's workshop name in here. Alright, so this today's 10-2. And take that extra 0 out. There we go. Alright, so we got today's workshop date in here for the file. And so next, I'm just going to start working on the logic board here. So we'll start on a new logic template. So I'm going to call this the classic stock signal. There we go. Alright, so the first condition I'll build is price crossing that moving average. And there we go. There's our crossover. So grab the crossover solver. Now I need to set this up. So we got price crossing over the SMA 30. All right. So I'm going to set indicator A to price. Right. So we're going to be using the closing price of the bar, and then we want to set indicator B down here to the SMA 30. All right, so we can see we got, we have price crossing that SMA quite a bit here. Back and forth, back and forth. All right, so just remember that the idea here, is not so much this trading system, but the idea here is, connecting all three of these indicator conditions together within BloodHound, right? So I'm just gonna, I'll give a little explanation of what I'm doing here, but I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail of this system here. All right, so we've got, condition 1, price crossing our moving average. So condition 2, right, is our stochastic, in this case, crossing above. Right, crossing above there, or when our stochastic crosses down that 75 value there. Right. So that's going to take another 2 crossovers. So let me grab another 2 crossovers. Actually, I'm just going to grab one and I'll make a copy of it later on. Okay, so this is going to be the stochastics crossing the 75. There we go. So indicator A is going to be our stochastics. Right, and I'm just using 7, 14, and 3, the standard settings here. And what you see here is the D plot of that. And indicator B is going to be our 75 value here, our 75 level. So I'm going to set the type to a fixed value and put 75 in there. Right, so we can see whenever the stochastic is crossing that 75 line, right, when it crosses up and when it crosses down. So we're only interested when it's crossing down. So we're not interested when it's crossing up. So we're going to set our evaluate. We're going to set that to shorts only. That's all that we're interested in. Right, so we're not interested in these long cross-ups. So I got rid of those by setting evaluate to short only. Okay, so now I'm going to take this solver that I just built and make a copy of it and convert it over to the 25 level. So what I did is go to the solver tab. I clicked on the solver, hit copy, and I'm going to change the name on here. Let me change the name, and then next thing I'm going to do is go back to my solvers menu, go to existing nodes, and there's that new node, the stochastic crossing the 25. So there we go, put that on the board, and now all I have to do is make a few minor changes. So instead of 25, I need that to be, instead of 75, I need it to be 25. And let's see, yeah, so here we can see the stochastic crossing down to 25, but what I want is the stochastic crossing above the 25, right? So I want this long signal from this cross up. So I just need to go back to evaluate, set it to long only, right? So now I have my long cross up signals there. All right. So it took two solvers to basically generate one condition for the stochastic. So the next step is I'm going to take an OR node, plug these into an OR node, take a look at that. So now when we look at our look at the output on the chart here, right? You can see I got my cross up above 25, and my cross below 75. All right, so that's what I'm looking for the stochastics. All right, so next let's move on to the MACD, and we'll find when the MACD crosses that zero line. And so I'm going to use another crossover. All right, so some of you who have been in this room a lot have typically seen me use the threshold solver to look at something like the MACD to be above or below the zero line. So I'm using the crossover because the crossover is going to give me one signal at the crossover point. All right, so let me I'll get this built and kind of explain. It'll be easier to explain once you see the signals on the chart why I'm using the crossover. All right, so we got the MACD crossing the zero line. So let's set this indicator A to our MACD line. Alright, and remember I sped up the MACD settings to 8 and 18. And I'm going to use the MACD line, so that's already selected here. So if I wanted to use the histogram, right, I could come down here and just select the diff plot. That's the histogram for the MACD, but let's use the MACD line. And now down here in indicator B, that's going to be the zero line, or the zero value. So let's put it on fixed value, and it's on 0. Alright, so we can see, right, we're getting signals whenever the MACD crosses that 0 line there. Alright, so let's see. Let me put some arrows on here. I'm going to mark these points for the MACD. Alright, so let me get back to why I'm using the crossover for this MACD indicator. And that's because, remember, the rules for this classic stock signal is that condition 1, condition 2, and condition 3 all need to happen typically within 3 days of each other, right? Or 3 days would be within 3 bars of each other, right? So Joe's question said that his conditions happen within about 5 bars of each other. So this classic stock signal, the way I learned it is that these typically need to happen within 3 days of each other. So that's kind of what this system and what Joe's question has in common. So for the MACD, I'm using a crossover solver because it gives me just one signal at this crossover point. So whereas if I use the threshold solver, right, it's going to give me a long signal whenever the MACD is across or whenever the MACD is above the 0 line, right? So all of these bars would be marked, with a long output. But I don't want a long output down here. I only want a long output at the crossover point and also 2 days after. Right. So here's kind of the before I explain that, let me go in and mark a bunch of crossover signals here. So I'm marking all the signals when price crosses our SMA. Now this oil oil instrument looks like we're in some consolidation, so we're definitely getting a lot of signals here, a lot of choppy action. It's firing off a lot of signals. Alright, and next I'm going to mark the stochastic crossovers. So let's connect our stochastic condition up. Alright. Now, so let's look at this area that I have circled here. Right, we can see things are not lining up, right? So price crosses on this arrow. Right, now if we look down to the stochastic, it actually crossed one bar before price crossed. And then if we look at the MACD crossed one bar after price. Right, so we had the stochastic cross first, then price crossed second, and then our MACD crossed last, right? So none of these line up on the same bar. So now essentially we want all three of these conditions to happen, nearly at the same time, where they all basically have to happen kind of together. So when you have rules that say, when you have trade rules that say, everything has to happen together, then what that means is you're going to want to use an AND node here. So I'm going to connect everything together using an AND node. And, hold on a moment. I got a bunch of leaders crossing each other. There we go. I had these nodes a little too close together. Things were connecting where I didn't want them. Alright. There. Okay, that looks nice and clean. Alright. So all three conditions are connected to the AND node. And if we look at the chart, we get nothing because none of these conditions are all happening on the exact same bar, so we get nothing out. So what we need to do is kind of build in that 3-day allowance, right? That's a part of the rules, is that these conditions can happen within 3 days of each other. So to do that, now there's various ways that we can do this. So the crossover solver actually has this lookback period, and I can set that to 3. And now, you can see how these crossover signals will now extend out 3 bars. Right? You see how they extend out 3 bars? So sometimes they don't extend out 3 bars, right? So like for example here, we had a cross down, and then we had immediately had a cross up. So that cross up canceled the previous cross down, right? So we had a let's see. So let me grab an arrow, right? So we had a short signal. Oops. Let me take my draw mode off. Okay. So we had a short output from this cross down, and then we had a cross up the next bar. So this short signal was not extended out 3 bars because it was canceled by the next cross up. And then we had a cross down again, right? And then that was the last cross down, and so that cross down was extended out 3 bars, right? So, extending our crossover conditions out 3 bars will now help, will now help the system, line up within 3 bars of each other. So that's one way we can do it, right? We can use this lookback period. So another way we can do this, so let's, hold on a moment, let me get things set up. Okay, so let's work on our stochastic crossover here. So, and let me name this OR node. All right. So you can, just a little tip here, you can name your logic nodes so you know what they're doing. All right, so I can see that this, what's coming out of this OR node is the stochastic crossover. So, all right, so, all right, we have our stochastic crossover signals, and so we want to extend these for 3 bars as well. So there's one way I can do this, is I can go into the crossover solver, change my lookback period for both of them, right? Just like I did with this one, right? It has a lookback of 3, but I'm going to show you another way to do this, because, right, it only works, well, yeah, so since these are 2 crossover solvers, it'll work because both of these solvers have a lookback period. But let's say one of these wasn't a crossover solver. Let's say it was something else, like one of these was a threshold solver going into a logic node. Well, that, some of the other solvers don't have this lookback period. So typically, after a logic node, like say like this OR node, or after an AND node, if you need to extend the signals coming out of this OR node, typically you'll need to use this lookback function node. Right? So this lookback function node was built because not all solvers have that lookback option, but more importantly, logic nodes don't have a lookback. So a lot of times you'll need to take the signal coming out of a logic node and extend it forward for a certain number of bars. So let's take this, I'm going to disconnect that, there we go. So we'll take this lookback, and you see it has a displacement and a lookback. So in our case, we don't want to use a displacement, so we're going to set that back to 0. But we do want to look back, and we're going to set that look back to 3. And the mode, we want to use max. Alright, so look at here. So now our stochastic signals have been extended forward by 3 bars. So extending the signals forward 3 bars was done by using this lookback node. And so when you're wanting to extend signals forward, you're going to want to use a lookback mode of max, right? A lookback mode of max. Alright, so then last condition is our MACD here. So let's take a look at our MACD. Alright, so our MACD is also using a crossover solver. So I'm just going to use the lookback period for this. Set it to 3, like so. And there we go. We can see all the MACD crossovers of the 0 line, and now extended out 3 bars. Okay, so now let's see. Let's connect our stochastic signals into the AND node. So now let's take a look at the result node. Alright, so now we got so now we got one of the classic stock signals to fire off. Actually, we got a couple here. So yeah, so we had the stochastic happen. Right, this happened 2 bars back, and looks like price happened there as well. And then price crossed again, and then our MACD, seems like our MACD is always the last one to fire off, at least in this area. Then the MACD fired off. So let's see what else we have here. Alright, yeah, there we go. let's see. Let's take a look, see what happened here. So we get we got a cross down there, and it looks like our stochastic crossed down about there, and the MACD crossed down there or there. Yeah, so what happened, right, is I think the stochastic crossed down a little too soon, right? Than the other conditions. So, all right. So let's say we wanted to, capture this cross down, which means we need to kind of loosen up the rules, right? I probably need to allow for 4 days for everything to happen. So what I can do is I can go into my solvers, right? I'll change the look back period. Oh, and just one thing to be aware of, right? Indicator A, right, is set to price, and this also, when you're looking at price, also has a look back period. So don't change the look back period for price, right? We're changing the look back period for the solver itself, for the conditions, right? So that's under the settings section here. So let's change this to 4. We'll go to our look back node, change that to 4, and since our MACD is always the last one to kind of fire off, I don't think we need to change our MACD look back. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Okay, so what I'm looking at, right? What I'm looking at is the look back for the stochastics, right? So we can see we got our stochastics, and it's extended forward for 4 bars, but it's not enough. It looks like our MACD took 5 bars, no, 6 bars. Yeah, so I'd really kind of have to extend that out to 6 bars. There we go. So you can see, right? So the stochastic crossed here, and the MACD crossed way out here. So I had to get those signals, those cross down signals, extended forward until the MACD did its crossover. And we can see here, price crossed down inside of this, inside of this short area here. So now let's take a look at the final result there. And let's see. Oh, okay, actually the MACD crossed down 1 bar back. So let me move my arrow back. And so I do have some extra signals there. Let's see, so I'm going to take the look back for my stochastic and cut it back to 5 bars. Okay, there's our signals. All right. So sometimes, right, when you're using this, when you're just using look back periods, as we're doing, sometimes you will get, multiple signals in a row. And let's take a look here. So we got price crossing down here, and looks like our stochastic crossed down there. And the MACD crossed down there. Right? So we're getting these extra signals here because if you remember, we're taking everything and then extending it forward. So let's see, take a look at price. Yeah, right. So I've marked price with an arrow and then the 3 diamonds afterward to kind of illustrate, right, that look back coming out of the right price crossing the SMA. And I'll put myself in draw mode here. All right, so next I'm going to look at the stochastic crossover condition. Right, there's a stochastic crossover condition. So let me mark these with a bunch of diamonds, like so. Now let's look at the MACD. Okay, so and now let's switch back to looking at the AND node, which is the final signals here. So if we look at all the diamonds, right, you see how the diamonds are overlapping? So that's why you get extra signals there, right? All right, well, I think that pretty much covers it for using the lookback period, right? So just to kind of summarize, this was using the lookback period to get, you know, your conditions to extend forward, you know, in time until your other conditions happen. Right? So the stochastic condition happened first, right? Price happened second, and then the MACD always seems to be happening last or third. And so that's how you can get your conditions to all line up. Right? So it is, so with yeah, so let me kind of expand upon the AND node here. So the AND node, right, requires a signal to be coming into the AND node all on the same bar in order to get an output. In order to get a signal out of the AND node, signal on the same bar. Right? So that's why there's no signals in between, because actually it's probably easier to say it's probably easier to explain to say that, you know, the reason why we have 3 short signals here is because the AND node has 3 short signals coming into it on those 3 bars. You know, that's why I drew those diamonds in there to help illustrate that. So, all right, so it looks like that answered Joe's question. All right, so David has a question about building 3 different conditions. So once again, we got another great example of having a condition 1, condition 2, and condition 3, and, you know, getting them all linked together, but also how to build those conditions. Right. So all right. So this question has 2 moving averages, and we're waiting for them to cross. So we've got an EMA 5 and 12. So then once they cross, then the second condition is we're going to check for 2 other SMAs. Right, so our 12 and 25 SMAs, so we're looking to see if the 12 and the 25 SMA, we're checking the distance between those 2 moving averages, and we want them to be within 8 ticks of each other. All right, so that's condition 2, is we want 2 moving averages to be within 8 ticks or less of each other. And then the third condition is we're looking for price to touch, you know, a certain line. So let's see, David, you know, to kind of help me out with this, could you give me some kind of an indicator that I could use, for this certain line. I really can't demonstrate stuff unless I have some specifics. So if you can come up with something that kind of approximate, what you're using for the certain line, that would be very helpful. All right. So while David is looking for some kind of indicator that approximates this certain line, I'm going to start adding my moving averages onto the chart here. Alright. Alright, so let's get the EMA 5 and 12 on here. And next, I'm going to get the SMA 12 and 25. Looks like I'm missing one of my EMAs. Let's see. Oh, oops. 12. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the red lines are the EMAs, and the white lines are the SMAs. So, once the red lines cross each other, then we'll be looking for the white lines to be in close proximity to each other. And look, there we go. So there was our ATM fired off. And that was short-lived, wasn't it? Let's see. All right, I need to shut down Raven here, because right now I think it's Raven that's actually backpainting the chart. Yeah, Raven's backpainting the chart, and I want BloodHound to backpaint the chart. I want BloodHound to have control over the racing stripes so I can demonstrate David's question. So now I'm going to take Raven off, and the way I like to shut Raven down is to hit the flatten everything. Now that's going to shut down all the strategies. So if you have a couple of Ravens loaded up on different charts doing some back testing, this is going to disable all your strategies. So just be aware of that. There we go. And right, so if we go to our strategy tab, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but if we go to our strategy tab, right, there's our various strategies. And let's see, so you notice that we had 2 on here. Let's see, so one of these Ravens is linked to a 60-tick chart, and the other one's linked to this 4-range chart. So as a general rule, I'd say it's a good idea to remove these Ravens off of this list. So that way, because what happens is any strategy that you see on this tab is stored in Ninja's database, and sometimes these get lost for various reasons. The strategies will get lost, but they're still stored in Ninja's database, and it doesn't get cleaned up, and it just kind of throws up little miscellaneous little warning messages to you that just become kind of annoying. You'll see little warnings in the log file here that such and such strategy couldn't be found, which nobody cares because you're not running that strategy anymore. But so just to kind of keep NinjaTrader's database clean, I'd recommend that you remove these strategies, these leftover strategies from the strategy tab here. So all right, so I've got Raven off the chart here. And let's see. Alright, so I'll just get BloodHound open and we'll just start building that system. Let's see. Not sure what to call this right now, so I'll just leave the logic template name alone. So let's go back. I want to clarify some of the wordings here. So the first condition is we're waiting for two moving averages to cross, right? And then after that cross, then we're going to check the two SMAs and to see if they're within, right? If they're within a certain distance of each other. So this word cross really isn't. That's not the way it's going to be done in BloodHound. So we're not going to use a crossover solver for this, right? So as this kind of expands upon the first question that I was talking about, the first question of linking systems. And right, so remember when I built the classic stock signal, it used a bunch of crossovers, and the crossovers only give you a signal at the crossover point. But I think the real condition that David's looking for is that when the EMA 5 is above or below the EMA 12, then that's when he's looking for these two moving averages to be within a certain distance of each other. So instead of using the crossover condition, I'm actually going to use the comparison solver instead. So let me give a name here. So this is going to be the EMA 5 compared to the EMA 12. Right. So really what we're looking at is, let's stretch this out a little bit, is the EMA 5 above or below the EMA 12? That's really what we're looking for. At least that's what I think David's looking for. Let's see. Okay. Thanks, David, for that information. All right. All right. So let me change my indicators over to the EMA. So we're going to put the faster moving average up here in A. So in section A, in indicator A, we're going to put the EMA 5 up here, and then we're going to put the slower moving average in indicator B. So let's switch that to the EMA. Alright, so let's take a look at this. Right, so remember the red lines are the EMAs. So when the dashed red line is above the solid red line, right, that's the EMA 5 above the EMA 12. And so we're in a long state. So right, so we're kind of in a long state, and so we'll be looking for our SMAs to be within a certain distance, within 8 ticks of each other. I'm going to use the comparison solver again to look for when the two SMAs are within 8 ticks of each other. Right? So the second comparison solver is going to look for that condition of two indicator plots being within 8 ticks of each other. So let's connect this up. Alright, so this time it's the SMA 12 to be within 8 ticks of the SMA 25. Alright, let me just double check here. Yeah, SMA 12 to the SMA 25. Okay. So let me set up my SMAs properly. I'm going to change the periods to 12 and change this one down here to 25. Alright, so I'm looking for an 8-tick distance. So I'm going to set my large amount and small amount to 8 ticks. Now the key to finding, the key to determining when these two SMAs are within 8 ticks of each other, the key to it is using the correct output here. Alright, so if you look at the label of these outputs, right, we can see there's one here that says A equals B within so many ticks. And usually this number will update. Right now it says 0 on my computer. But if I click off and click back on, right, that forces this forces the label to update. So now you can see it says A equals B within 8 ticks, right? And that's because my small amount says 8 ticks, right? So this is the setting I want to use here. So I'm going to take these other output conditions and set them to 0, like so. Set that to 1, right? I'm going to set these to 0 as well. Down here in the short output section, I'll set these to 0. I'll set that to 1. So now, all right, I can see whenever the two white lines are within 8 ticks of each other. Okay. So it looks like whenever we get into a strong trend, that's when our moving averages begin to pull apart from each other, right? So we had this nice, long, strong uptrend, and those two moving averages pulled apart from each other. So, but we can see here, right, we get a long and a short output at the same time, right? So if you're looking for two indicator plots to be, within a certain distance of each other, that is a non-directional kind of condition. So that's why you want a long and a short out together at the same time. So the first condition here, this first condition, you see it does have a direction to it, right? So it has a long direction or a short direction. So this first one will basically filter out the second one here, right? So then the way we'll do that is with an AND node. Alright, so what we're seeing right now is, we're seeing if the two EMAs, what direction the two EMAs are crossed in, and when our SMAs are within a certain distance of each other. And we get a direction on that, right? So, alright, so the third condition, David suggests that we use the EMA 5. Alright, the EMA 5. Let me go back to the rules here. Alright, so we're looking for price to touch that EMA 5. Okay. Let's see. Alright, so there we go. So we have price definitely touched our EMA 5 there. Let's make that EMA 5 a little thicker. It's a little more important now. There we go. So it looks like that would qualify for a trade signal right there. So let's build this third condition. All right, so we're looking for price to touch that EMA 5. So if we're in an uptrend, all right, like we are now, if we're in an uptrend, it's going to be the low price of the bar that touches that EMA. If we're in a downtrend, let's see if we get a downtrend. Yeah, here we go. If we're in a downtrend, you know, it's going to be the high of the bar that touches that EMA 5. So, all right, so when we're looking for price touching our line, right, we need to know which price is it touching that line. Is it the closing price? Is it the high of the bar? Is it the low of the bar? So for this example, I'm going to use the low of the bar touching that EMA 5 to generate a long signal there. All right, so let's use another comparison solver. Alright, so we're going to be looking to see if the low or the high right, is touching the EMA 5. So let's take indicator A. We'll set that to price. Right, and so for a long signal, we're looking for the low. We're using the low price of the bar to generate this long signal up, right, when the low touches that EMA. So we'll set long to the low price. And then shorts will be the opposite of the low, so we'll set that to the high price. Let's set indicator B to our EMA. Right, and EMA 5. And so now it's a matter of setting up our outputs here correctly. So I'm going to set our large amount and small amount by 1 tick. So let's see. And let's see. So let me clear out all these outputs here. All right. So let's think about this. So the low price of this bar, right? The low price of this bar is less than our EMA, right? So when the low price of this bar touches that EMA, it's actually less than that EMA. So to generate a long signal, we're looking for A. Let's see, yeah, we're looking for A. So remember, A is A is either the low price or the high price, but for the long outputs, so right here where it says price type long, A is going to be the low price. Oops, don't double click on that. Let me go back to the low price. All right, so A in this this text here, A is going to be the low price. B is going to be the EMA. So when A is less than B, we want an output here. And actually, I'm going to change my small amount to 0. There we go. All right. So, yeah, to get this to work, right, I got one large amount set to 1 tick and small amount set to 0 tick. So, let's see. So we have A equals B, and it says within 1 tick right now, and that's because it didn't. Right, this didn't update. So let me click on another solver, and then click back to get it to update. So there we go. We have A equals B within 0 ticks. All right, so the 0 ticks comes from the small amount. So if A actually equals B, in other words, if the low price, which is A, actually equals the EMA, which is B, then we want a long signal. Or if A is less than, if the low price is less than the EMA 5 by 0 ticks, we want a long output. Or also if the low price is less than the EMA 5 by 1 ticks, by 1 tick or more, we still want a long output. So in other words, what that's saying is whenever the low price gets below our EMA 5, right, we want to generate a signal, because that is when the price comes back and touches that EMA 5, right? So we do also have, we're going to get some other outputs here as well, right? Whenever the low price is just below, I mean, sometimes even the whole bar is below the EMA, right? But these other, right, long outputs, those are going to get removed by these other conditions here, right? By these other conditions. So we don't have to worry about, right, these extra long outputs here. So, and let's see. All right. So now let's take care of when we want a short output. And essentially, you almost always, when you're using the comparison solver, you want your outputs to be mirrored to each other almost all the time. So I'm just going to mirror this like so. Alright, so I have ones set below for the long output, and for the short output I have my ones up top here, right? So you can see they're mirrored to each other. So I have zeros on top up here, and for the short output I have zeros down below here. Right? So let's take a look back here. Yeah, there we go. So it looks like the low price touched our EMA right there, just barely touched it, right? All right, so let's see what we have so far, right? So this is just our EMAs crossed above or below, and our SMAs within 8 ticks of each other. And now if we connect this in, that will actually generate the signal. All right, so there we go. That's the actual signal right there. So I'm sure this doesn't look as expected because we're substituting this EMA 5 for some other proprietary indicator. So it's probably not looking as clean as it would if you had that custom indicator that David's using. Let's see. Alright, so let me see if there's any questions on this. Looks like David's got an additional question. Let's see, so David's asking, specifically, can I get in a trade the moment price touches that EMA? Yes, you can, David. What you have to do is you have to use a NinjaTrader setting that fundamentally changes how an indicator operates. So if you want something to happen in real time, you will have to Oops, there we go. All right, so you have to open up your indicators, and so you'll have to set BloodHound to calculate on bar close. You have to turn that off, right? And that means that NinjaTrader will now calculate BloodHound in real time on each incoming tick, right? So we'll set calculate on bar close to false, and let's take a look here. And so yeah, it looks like we got a setup right there. Let's see. I should also let's set this EMA. Right. Also, all these moving averages are also calculating with bar close set to false as well. Right. So when you have BloodHound, right, set to calculate on bar close set to false, that means all the indicators that are running inside of BloodHound are also calculating with calculate on bar false like that. Right, so let's click that, and there we go. Let's see. Actually, you might want to make a little tweak to the system. I don't know. It kind of depends on how you want to see your signals, but see, if I use the low price, the signal is going to stay there. If I switch to the closing price, where'd the closing price go? There we go. If I switch to the closing price, then we're only going to get a signal on this bar when price actually comes down below that EMA, right? So you can see price is above the EMA, and hopefully it'll tick down one more time for us and show the price going below the EMA. Right, there we go. So price just ticked down below that EMA and the signal fired off. And then if price ticks above that EMA, the signal is going to disappear. Right. Yeah, so there we go. So now the closing price is just barely above that EMA, and you can see the signal disappears. So there's lots of ways, that you could set this up depending on how you want it to look. Right. So let's see. I'll go back. Oh yeah. Let's see if we leave it on the close. Right. Some things to be aware of. If we leave it on the closing price, you can see that in some, historically, you can see you're not going to see signals anymore on some historical cases, right? So right there, obviously price came down and touched that EMA, but there's no signal there because the closing price is actually above it. Same thing back here, right? Price pulled back, touched the EMA, but the closing price, but the closing price of the bar is below it, so there's no signal, so the signal disappeared. So historically, you'll see different results versus real time. All right, so these are just some of the things you have to decide on. Since it's because you can't have both. So one thing, so I guess here's a way to explain it. So when let's see, oops, I want to bring up BloodHound here. So back to the indicator window. All right. This calculate on bar close, when I have it set to false, this only applies in real-time data. So on a static historical chart, so static or historical data on your chart always runs set to true, right? NinjaTrader cannot calculate historical data with calculate on bar false, right? Calculate on bar close false only works in real time, right? So that's another, that's just how NinjaTrader functions, right? That's just how this setting functions for NinjaTrader. All right, so just be aware of that. And so because this calculate on bar close false doesn't work historically, that's why there's no signal here where my arrow's pointing, right? So, yeah. All right, let's see. Let me take a moment to look at the board, see if there's any other, and yeah, see if there's any other questions from David on this. And let's see. Yeah, so David's asking, when using Raven, do you have to change anything? Yes, so Raven will have to run with calculate on bar close false as well, right? So remember, so the way this all works is Raven actually calls up BloodHound. So when you're loading this template, you're loading this template into BloodHound, right? So Raven's calling up BloodHound to calculate the signals. So once again, to get BloodHound to calculate with bar close set to false, you'll need to set Raven or your strategy, right? So you'll see NinjaTrader has this calculate on bar close. It applies this calculate on bar close to everything, right? It will apply this to your strategies, and it applies it to all your indicators. So you'll need to have your strategy set to false as well to have those calculate in real time like that. So let's get rid of that. Okay. Let's see. So Don's asking, all your boxes come from the solver nodes, function nodes, or logic nodes? Correct. Yes. So basically, let's kind of go over some terminology here. All right. So every object on this board, we call it a node. Right? So it's called a node because it has all these little connection points. So you connect one node to another node to another node, right? So this node connection is what builds a system. All right. So you're taking information from one node, passing it to another node to do some processing of that information, right? So this AND node is taking data from all three of these solver nodes, and it's processing that data and giving you an output, right? That's basically how software works. As you have a piece of code, right? So think of this as like a subroutine, doing doing some calculations, right? This is another subroutine and another subroutine, and then those subroutines get fed into another piece of the software code to do some processing and make some decision making. So so each of these, so we have solver nodes. So the solver nodes, they do very specific tasks. So for example, this bar direction, that is just going to basically tell you if the bar is up bar or if it's a down bar. Very simple. Very simple. Very simple condition processing that it's doing. Okay, so the bar length, that's just doing another simple condition. It's just it'll tell you what the bar length is. Well, actually, it'll check to see if your bar meets a certain length or is less than a certain length. Other common solvers, this comparison solver, which I've been using a lot, just compares one indicator plot to another indicator plot, and it tells you, is indicator A above or below indicator B, right? So all these solvers are doing very specific tasks, right? They have very specific kind of calculations that they do. Function nodes. These guys don't work with indicators, right? So the solver nodes, these do the work with your indicators. These typically use indicators to do their work. There's a couple exceptions. Like the bar direction and the bar length. That's not an indicator. That's the bar. But the rest of these are using indicators to do their work. Now function nodes. These don't work with indicators, but what they do is they manipulate the signal. So like this inverter, it's going to do exactly what it says. So the inverter, I can take the signals coming out of this comparison solver and I can invert those signals, right? So it's processing, or it's manipulating the signals coming out of this solver, right? Or if I needed to, I could manipulate the signals coming out of this AND node. I could invert them if I needed to. So function nodes take the signals coming from other nodes and basically manipulate them, right? So every function node has a input and a output. So long short modifier, right? It has an input and it has an output. So all these function nodes have inputs and outputs because they're doing various signal processing, right? Just like this AND node, right? This AND node is also doing signal processing, right? It's taking all the inputs, processing them, and then you get an output. So that's what all these function nodes are doing, right? They're designed to kind of manipulate, manipulate the data coming out of a solver or a logic node. And so logic nodes also process or manipulate the signals in a logical format. That's why they're called logic nodes. All right, there's different types of logic nodes. Right, a ratio node basically kind of like takes an average. It kind of takes, everything that you connect into it. It takes an average of all the signals coming into it, and that spits out an output there. That's what a ratio node is. So I'm not gonna, I don't want to go too off topic here. Don's question is just basically, is just kind of some terminology on what all this stuff is. Yeah. So, right. So you have the blue ones are solver nodes. The purple ones are function nodes, and then the logic nodes each have their own color, right? So and or have different colors, stuff like that. Let's see. So the second part of Don's question is, then my indicators will determine. So his indicators that are used in his system will determine the number of nodes needed. Correct, Don. Well, it's a combination of things, Don. So it's got to be a combination of the number of indicators, but it's also a combination of what are your conditions, what are your trade rules as well. So each of your trade rules is going to need a solver node. Some trade rules need 2 solver nodes, right? So let's for example, let's go back to the classic stock signal. This is kind of a great example. Here, let's see. This has got a little messy here, but if you, I'm sure you remember. Let's see. Right. So the really thin white line in here. Let me see if I can get out of this chop. Here we go. So remember the thin white line. That was our SMA 30 from the classic stock signal. Right. So if we look at all right, if we look at the system here, right? So when we were looking at the SMA 30 and comparing it to price, that only required one solver. But when we were looking at the stochastics here, right? Remember the stochastics, we had stochastics had, you know, what looks like one condition, right? The stochastics had this one condition of crossing below 75 or crossing above 25, right? That sounds like one condition, but really it had to be broken down into two conditions. So therefore it took two crossover solver nodes, and then we joined them together with an OR node to turn it into one condition. Right, so but this was one indicator, but it took two solver nodes to kind of build that condition for that stochastic. So the number of nodes, you really don't know how many nodes you'll need, you know, until you just kind of go through and build the system. You know, I'd say it's not that uncommon for one rule. So say like this stochastic crossing 75 and 25. Now I guess you could kind of say that's one rule, but if you really break it down, right, the stochastic crossing 75, that's a rule, that's a condition, and then the stochastic crossing 25 is another condition. But you know, in our minds, we'll tend to think of it as one rule because it's just one indicator, but really it got broken down into two different conditions. So sometimes I'd say it's not that uncommon to have sometimes three solvers looking at one indicator to do kind of one task, right? So you could think of the stochastic rule as one task, or one rule. You know, this one rule for the stochastic actually took two different conditions. And sometimes, you know, one of these rules will take three conditions or even four conditions. So sometimes you might need four solvers, you know, looking at one indicator to kind of determine something. All right. So, and let's see, Don's asking, can I get consulting, one-on-one coaching? Let's see. Yes, you can, Don. So we've taken it off the site for now. But if anybody really wants, you know, some one-on-one coaching, just send us an email to support, and you know, just ask us for us, and we'll send you the links to do that here, right? So Don, just send us an email, you know, saying that you'd like some one-on-one consultations, and we'll send you the links how to do that. All right.